Hey there. Welcome back, or welcome for the first time. Tonight we're going on a trip across America with two guys who couldn't sit still. No need to stay awake for this one. No test, no quiz. Just a story about the open road, told quietly, for however long you're here. Sometimes you get this feeling like you're supposed to be somewhere else. Like the life in front of you is fine, but something out there is calling. If that restless feeling found you tonight, you picked the right story. This one knows that ache better than almost any book ever written. On the Road is a book about wanting life so badly you can taste it. About chasing something you can't name across 3,000 miles. It starts with Sal Paradise, young writer living in New York, winter of 1947. His marriage just ended. His father recently died. Everything feels stuck. Then a man named Dean Moriarty blows into his life like a tornado. And nothing, absolutely nothing, is ever the same for Sal again after that. Sal's apartment is small and cold. Books stacked everywhere, half-finished manuscripts on every surface. A typewriter waiting for a story worth telling. This is the before. America in 1947 is restless too. The war is over, the GI Bill sends young men to college, but something feels unfinished. Jazz is changing everything. Sal carries a quiet grief he doesn't talk about much. A father gone, a wife gone, a novel that won't come together. He needs something to break the spell. Then a letter arrives. Wild handwriting, slanting across the page like a car swerving between lanes. It's from someone named Dean Moriarty, out in Denver. Dean grew up on the streets of Denver. His father was a winnow on Larimer Street. Dean spent his childhood in reform schools and stolen cars. He taught himself everything. When Dean finally shows up at Sal's door in New York, it's like a lit match dropped into a room full of gasoline. Everything catches fire at once. Dean's eyes are blue and electric. He talks 100 miles an hour about books, cars, women, philosophy, jazz. He wants to know everything, and he wants to know it now. Dean meets Carlo Marx, the intense young poet. They spend entire nights locked in conversation, pushing each other deeper and deeper into questions that have no answers. Everyone orbits Dean. He has this gravity. You can't help watching him, following him, wanting whatever he has. Sal feels it most of all but doesn't understand it yet. Sal watches from the edges, notebook in his back pocket. He's drawn to Dean the way a writer is drawn to a story that hasn't been told yet. Before we follow Sal out onto the highway, before the wind and the speed and the jazz kick in, let me just pause here with you for a second. We do this every week. A new story, told gently, something to fall asleep to. If you'd like to keep finding us here, subscribe and tap that little bell. Thank you. Now, back to New York. Back to Sal, who's about to do the craziest and most beautiful thing he's ever done. He's going to hit the road. The word road starts burning in Sal like a fever. He can see it when he closes his eyes. The white line, the horizon, the west. Dean is already out there waiting. He spreads maps across his apartment floor and plans the route. Route 6, straight across America. It sounds perfect on paper. It won't be that simple. His aunt in Paterson watches him pack from the kitchen doorway. She knows she can't stop him. She presses money into his hand and tells him to be careful out there. Route 6 turns out to be a disaster. Sal stands in the rain at a crossroads for hours. No one stops. Not a single car. The great adventure starts with a cold soaking. Soaked and humbled, Sal gives up on Route 6 and takes a bus to Chicago instead. The romance of hitchhiking can wait. First, he needs to get out of the rain. Through the bus window, America unrolls like a scroll. Pennsylvania hills, Ohio flatlands, Indiana towns blinking past in the dark. Sal has never seen any of this before. Chicago hits Sal like a gust of wind. The buildings, the noise, the lakefront, and somewhere in the distance, jazz drifting from open doors. The West is closer now. From Chicago, Sal finally hitchhikes for real. Truckers pick him up, salesmen in dusty sedans. Each ride is a short life lived with a stranger. He learns to listen. Then he crosses the Mississippi River and something inside him shifts. The West isn't an idea anymore. It's real and it's enormous. And it's pulling him forward like a current. Ahead lies Denver, where Dean is waiting with his wild grin and his stolen cars and his impossible promises. The road opens up, and Sal drives straight into it. Denver spreads out below the mountains like a promise kept. Sal climbs out of a truck on Larimer Street, dusty and grinning, 3,000 miles from his apartment floor. Chad King's house becomes the gathering point. Friends of friends crowd the living room every night. Poets, hustlers, college kids, drifters. Denver is buzzing that summer. Dean in Denver is a different creature. He's already left a trail of chaos behind him. Borrowed cars, broken promises, 2 women convinced he belongs only to them. Marilu is Dean's first wife. Platinum blonde, 19 years old, sharp as a tack behind those big blue eyes. She knows exactly who Dean is and loves him anyway. Here's the thing about Dean. He's married to Marilu, but Camille is pregnant with his child across town. He runs between them like a man dodging traffic and somehow keeps smiling. Carlo Marx has followed Dean to Denver. In a dark basement apartment, they sit facing each other all night, pushing past politeness into something raw and philosophical and strange. Sal floats through the Denver scene like a camera. He sees everything, records everything, belongs to every group, and none of them. The outsider's privilege and his loneliness. Dean's talent for borrowing things is legendary. Cars appear and disappear. Money materializes from nowhere. He once talked a stranger into lending him a suit for a date. Late at night, after everyone else has gone home, Sal and Dean sit on a porch in the dark and talk about everything. Fathers, writing, what it means to be alive. This is the real stuff. Dean talks about his father, the old man somewhere on Larimer Street, sleeping in alleys, drinking wine from paper bags. Dean's voice drops when he tells this part. The bravado falls away. In that moment, Sal sees past the charm and the chaos. Underneath all of Dean's wildness is a boy who lost his father to the street and never stopped running from the same fate. The Denver parties reach a peak that last week. Every night is louder, wilder, more desperate. Jazz pouring from every doorway, everyone talking at once, no one listening. Beautiful and exhausting. But cracks are forming. People Dean borrowed from want their things back. Women he promised the world to compare notes and realize the math doesn't add up. The charm has a shelf life. Sal decides to keep going west alone. California is calling. He's had enough of the Denver drama, and the horizon is still pulling at him. Dean understands. He always understands leaving. Hitchhiking west from Denver means climbing into the Rockies. The air thins. The sky gets closer. Sal rides in the back of a truck watching the world drop away below him. A rancher picks him up in Nebraska. Quiet man, leather hands on the wheel, barely talks. But he drives Sal 200 miles and buys him dinner at a truck stop without being asked. On a bus heading south to Los Angeles, Sal meets a girl. Terry, with long black hair and dark eyes full of some sadness she doesn't explain. She's running from something too. Sal falls for Terry quickly and completely. Her gentleness, her quiet humor, the way she carries her troubles without complaint. For a while on that bus, the road stops mattering. In Los Angeles, they rent a cheap room near the bus station. Thin walls, bare bulb, mattress on the floor. But with Terry there it feels like a palace. They live on wine and oranges. When the money runs out, they follow Terry's family to the San Joaquin Valley cotton fields. Sal has never done farm work in his life. He's about to learn what the road really costs. Picking cotton under that California sun breaks every romantic idea Sal ever had about the road. His back screams. His hands bleed. The workers around him do this every single day. They pitch a tent at the edge of the fields and make it a home. Terry's young son plays in the dirt outside. Sal cooks beans over an open fire. Poverty has never felt this tender. Those weeks in the cotton fields are some of the most beautiful in the whole book. Simple, honest, grounded. No speed, no jazz, no Dean. Just earth and food and people you love. But the road starts pulling again. Sal can feel it in his bones, that restless itch that nothing settles. He loves Terry. He loves this life. And he's going to leave it anyway. Leaving Terry is one of the quietest heartbreaks in all of American literature. No shouting, no slamming doors. Just a man walking to a bus stop and a woman watching him go. The bus ride back to New York takes days. Sal watches America scroll past in reverse. Everything looks different from the other direction. He's not the same person who left. Back in New York, winter again. The apartment looks exactly the same. Typewriter still waiting. But now Sal has something to feed it. He starts putting the road into words. Months pass in New York. Sal works on his novel, takes odd jobs, sees friends. But in his quiet moments he thinks of Dean, wonders where he is, wonders what he's breaking now. Then it happens again. A knock at the door, and there's Dean. This time he's brought Marilou and a tall, confused fellow named Ed Dunkel. They drove a brand new Hudson straight from the west. The Hudson is beautiful. Dean drove it from the west like a man possessed, barely stopping, passengers clinging to their seats. The car is a temple and Dean is its wild-eyed priest. Marilou on this second trip is different. Wilder, less patient, more willing to match Dean's recklessness. She knows the marriage is ending, and she's decided to burn bright on the way out. Ed Dunkel is tall and amiable and perpetually lost. He abandoned his new wife in a hotel room somewhere in Arizona because Dean told him to. Ed does whatever Dean says most people do. Dean drags the whole crew through New York's literary circles. He charms Sal's writer friends with that blinding energy, that hunger to absorb every word, every idea, every person in the room. The intellectuals see through Dean immediately. He's not one of them and never will be. But they don't care. His realness is what they've been writing about and never living. He terrifies and thrills them. Carlo Marx corners Dean one evening and asks the question nobody else dares. What is it you're really doing, Dean? What are you running toward? Or is it just away from everything? Dean can't answer. He laughs it off, changes the subject, pours another drink. But the question hangs in the air for the rest of the book, maybe for the rest of his life. They head south. Sal, Dean, and Marilou packed into the Hudson, bound for New Orleans and Old Bull Lee's ramshackle house. The second road trip begins with a roar of the engine. Inside the car becomes a confessional. Dean talks for hours without stopping. About God, about time, about the secret meaning hidden inside every jazz note. Sal just listens and watches the road. Through Virginia at night, Dean pushes the Hudson to terrifying speeds on mountain curves. The headlights carve white tunnels in darkness. Marilou screams and laughs at the same time. Sal in the backseat watches America blur past like a film played too fast. Trees, farms, gas stations, sleeping towns. He tries to remember every detail. The writer's curse, the writer's gift. Tension between Dean and Marilou rises in the car like temperature. Arguments erupt over nothing, resolve into passionate reconciliation, then erupt again. The pattern is wearing them both thin. Old Bull Lee's house appears at the end of a dirt road outside New Orleans. It leans slightly, as if the swamp is slowly swallowing it. Cats patrol the porch. Welcome to the strangest refuge in America. Old Bull Lee is unlike anyone Sal has ever met. Gaunt, sardonic, brilliant. He sits on his porch with a drink and delivers judgments about the world with reptilian calm. He's seen everything and forgiven nothing. Bull Lee's wife tends to the children amid the chaos. The house runs on its own strange logic. Guns on the kitchen table, philosophy books in the bathroom, a garden growing wild with herbs no one can identify. Sal sits on the porch at Bull Lee's and looks at everyone gathered. Dean, Marilou, Bull, the children. The whole mad tribe together for one brief moment. Already he can feel it coming apart. Days at Bull Lee's blur together like humidity. Everyone sleeps late, drinks early, and argues about the nature of reality until the mosquitoes drive them inside. It's paradise for misfits. Bull Lee talks about America the way a surgeon talks about a patient on the table. Cold, precise, fascinated. He thinks the whole country is sleepwalking toward disaster and loving every minute of it. Dean can't sit still even here. He paces the porch, does push-ups in the yard, talks the neighbors into lending him tools for projects he never finishes. The mania has no off switch. Marilou and Dean reach the end of their rope at Bull Lee's. She's tired of being one of two. He's tired of pretending he can choose. The arguments stop being fun and start drawing blood. They leave New Orleans heading west again. The car feels heavier now. Something has shifted between Dean and Marilou that can't shift back. Sal rides in the middle, feeling the distance grow on both sides. In San Francisco, Dean does the thing everyone warned Sal about. He drops Marilou at a hotel, says he'll be right back, and drives away. He doesn't come back. Just like that, she's stranded. Marilou doesn't cry. She's been through this before, and she'll get through it again. But standing on that sidewalk in the San Francisco fog, she looks smaller than anyone should have to look. With Marilou gone, it's just Sal and Dean again, the core pair, no buffer, no audience. Just two men in a car, trying to figure out what they mean to each other, and failing beautifully. Crossing Texas takes forever. The state goes on, flat and enormous. Dean fills the emptiness with monologues about the meaning of time, gesturing at the horizon like it owes him answers. Somewhere in West Texas, Sal begins to see the pattern. Dean charms, Dean takes, Dean leaves. It's not cruelty exactly. It's something worse. He genuinely can't help it. The road is the only thing that holds him. San Francisco materializes through fog like a dream assembling itself. Hills climbing out of white mist, the bay glinting somewhere below, bridge cables disappearing into clouds, the edge of America. Camille is waiting. She's been waiting for months, pregnant, working alone. When Dean walks through the door with his grin and his excuses, her face tells the whole story of loving someone impossible. Sal crashes with his old friend Remy Boncoeur down by the waterfront. Remy is loud and generous and a little desperate himself. His shack overlooks the bay and shakes when the wind blows hard. San Francisco nights are something else. North Beach is alive with poetry and jazz and wine and arguments about God. Sal walks through it all feeling like he's found the capital of everything he's been looking for. Dean tries to hold two lives together in San Francisco. Camille and the baby by day, the jazz clubs and the hustle by night. He shuttles between them, growing thinner, wilder, more transparent. Then comes the night, the great jazz night that changes everything. A saxophone player in a tiny basement club reaches something Dean has been chasing his entire life. They call it IT. What is IT? It's the moment when everything falls away and you're purely alive. No past, no future, just the burning present. Dean has been driving toward this feeling every mile of his life. Sal feels it too. Not the same way Dean does. For Sal, IT comes quieter, more like a deep understanding than an explosion. He sees what the music is doing to Dean and understands his friend for the first time. Dean dances in the jazz club like a man on fire. Sweat soaking through his shirt, arms flailing, feet stomping. He's past embarrassment, past self-consciousness, past everything but the beat. This is his church. Morning comes like a bill collector. The jazz stops, the lights come up, and suddenly Dean is just a man with sweat stains and no money and a wife at home who locked the door hours ago. Camille has had enough. She throws Dean's clothes out the apartment window onto the San Francisco sidewalk. Shirts and socks flutter down like strange birds. Dean watches them fall and almost laughs. It's the same in every city. Dean arrives like a comet, burns through everything warm, and stands in the ashes wondering what happened. Denver, New York. San Francisco, the pattern is his prison. Sal goes back to New York, third time. Each return feels emptier than the last. The apartment is the same, the typewriter waits, but something in Sal has stretched beyond the shape of this room. The pull of the road versus the pull of stability. Sal lives between them like a man standing in two boats. Every day the boats drift a little further apart. Eventually he'll have to choose. Sal's aunt shakes her head when Dean's name comes up. "That Moriarty boy is going to get you killed," she says. She means it with love, but she also means it literally. Sal knows she might be right. Winter in New York drags on. Sal writes, takes classes, works odd jobs. Normalcy wraps around him like a coat that doesn't quite fit. He catches himself staring at highways from bridges. Letters arrive from Dean in San Francisco. Pages and pages of wild, unpunctuated prose, ideas crashing into each other like bumper cars. He's made up with Camille. The baby is beautiful. He wants to go to Mexico. Mexico. The word lights up in Sal's mind like a neon sign. South of everything familiar, south of America itself. Dean makes it sound like the last frontier. The final adventure, the answer to every question. Dean appears in New York once more. Each time he arrives thinner, wilder, with more miles on his face. His grin is the same, but the eyes behind it are running out of something essential. The Mexico plan crystallizes fast. Dean, Sal, and a friend named Stan Shepard drive south through Texas, cross the border at Laredo. Keep going until the road runs out, or they do. Dean prepares for Mexico with his usual manic efficiency. He procures a car nobody asks too many questions about. He packs tools, spare tires, maps. He's vibrating at a frequency that makes the air hum. They leave for Mexico on a spring morning. The car heads south through New Jersey, picking up speed. Dean at the wheel naturally. The last great adventure. None of them knows what it will cost. Through the American South the landscape shifts and softens. Virginia magnolias, Carolina pines, red clay roads glimpsed from the highway. The air thickens and slows. Even Dean drives a little slower here. Approaching the Texas border, something changes in the air. The land flattens, the sky expands. And you can feel Mexico below you like a heartbeat through the ground. Dean drives faster, sensing the border. Crossing into Mexico at Laredo. The bridge over the Rio Grande is short, but the distance it covers is enormous. Everything on the other side looks different, smells different, moves at a different speed. Mexican countryside unfolds like a painting from a dream you almost forgot. Adobe villages, mountains folding into mountains. Farmers walking beside donkeys on roads that haven't changed in centuries. Children run alongside the car laughing, bare feet slapping the dirt road. They wave and shout and want nothing except to run beside something fast and new. Dean waves back like a parade marshal. In Mexico, Dean becomes something even wilder than before. No speed limits, no expectations he understands, no rules that apply. He's a man released from the last cage he didn't know he was in. The mountain roads are terrifying. Hairpin turns with no guardrails, 1,000-foot drops into Jungle Canyon. Dean takes them at full speed, laughing. Sal and Stan grip whatever they can reach and pray silently. They descend into jungle. The air goes thick and green and close. Strange birds call from canopy so dense the sky disappears. The road narrows to a single lane of cracked pavement swallowed by vegetation. A village celebration pulls them off the road. Lanterns strung between trees, a makeshift band playing, local mezcal passed around in ceramic cups. Dean dances until his boots raise dust clouds. Sal just watches and smiles. Something is shifting in Sal. This is farther from home than he's ever been, in every way that matters. The language is different, the food, the stars, the pace of time itself. He feels himself changing at the edges. Dean sees Mexico as the ultimate freedom. No American guilt, no American clocks, no American wives waiting. He talks about staying forever, starting over. His eyes glow with a plan that will never happen. There are darker nights in Mexico too. Places where Dean's appetites lead them that Sal would rather not describe. Sal watches his friend disappear into rooms he doesn't follow into. Not everything on the road is beautiful. Then Sal gets sick. Dysentery hits him like a freight train in the jungle heat. One day he's fine, the next he can barely stand. The adventure turns into a survival story overnight. Fever turns Mexico into hallucination. The mountains melt, the jungle breathes, the road coils like a snake. Sal drifts in and out of consciousness while Dean drives on, always on, toward Mexico City. Mexico City is enormous. Ancient and modern and chaotic all at once. They arrive at night and the city swallows them whole. Sal can barely lift his head from the back seat to see it. They find a cheap hotel. Sal collapses on the bed and doesn't move for days. Fever and chills alternate. Mexico City goes on outside the window, vibrant and indifferent. He's never been this far from home or this alone. Then Dean does the unforgivable thing. While Sal lies sick and helpless in that hotel room, Dean packs his bag, walks out the door, and drives north. He leaves Sal in Mexico City, alone, sick. 3,000 miles from home. Sal wakes to an empty room. Dean's bag is gone. The car is gone. The silence where Dean's voice should be is deafening. This is the deepest wound the road has ever dealt him. Sal lies in that Mexico City hotel room for days. Strangers bring him water. A maid changes his sheets without being asked. The kindness of people who owe him nothing keeps him alive. Recovery comes slowly. First he can sit up, then stand, then walk to the window and look out at a city he barely remembers arriving in. Mexico City is beautiful. He wishes he could hate it. The journey home takes everything he has left. Buses, borrowed rides, border crossings with a fever he can't quite shake. America comes back into view through a Greyhound window, familiar and strange. New York again. But this time nothing feels like home. The apartment is just walls now. The typewriter is just metal. Something broke in Mexico City that hasn't healed yet and might not ever completely. Was Dean ever really his friend? Sal turns the question over at night, lying awake. A friend doesn't leave you sick in a foreign country. But a friend also doesn't make you feel that alive. Both things are true. Sal's reckoning goes deeper than Dean. What was he chasing across those 3,000 miles? Freedom, experience. Or just the feeling of running fast enough that the emptiness couldn't catch him. The road, Sal realizes, isn't really freedom. It's a beautiful illusion of freedom. Real freedom would mean staying somewhere long enough to face what you're running from. Dean never could. Could Sal? Dean is America's shadow, Sal thinks. The handsome, reckless dreamer who destroys everything he touches while grinning. The dark side of the dream that says you can have it all if you just move fast enough. This is when the real novel begins. Not on the road, but after it. At the typewriter, alone in the apartment, turning pain and wonder into paragraphs. The writer needs the adventurer, but the writing happens in stillness. Memory becomes raw material. Sal replays the first meeting. Dean at the door in winter, snow on his shoulders, that impossible grin. Knowing now what he didn't know, then doesn't make the memory less electric. Denver comes back in waves. Those wild summer parties, everyone young and broke and certain the world belonged to them. The mountains behind it all like a promise. Was it really that golden, or did Sal paint it that way? Terry in the cotton fields. That one haunts him most. The woman he could have stayed with, the life he could have chosen. But he chose the road instead, and the road chose Dean, and Dean chose himself. The jazz nights. When Sal writes about those, the prose changes rhythm. It gets faster, more breathless, trying to capture what music does when it reaches past language into something primal and true. Old Bull Lee's words come back uninvited. The sardonic warnings Sal brushed off at the time now ring with prophecy. The old man saw everything coming and said so. Nobody listened. Nobody ever listens to the sober one. Every departure replayed. New York to Denver to San Francisco to New York to Mexico and back. Each one felt like beginning, but was really just another lap around the same track. The circle disguised as a line. Carlo Marx was right. His question to Dean was the question of the whole book. What are you doing with your life? Dean couldn't answer then. He still can't. Maybe the inability to answer is the answer. Marilou on that San Francisco sidewalk. Sal writes her into the story and realizes he never asked what happened to her after Dean drove away. The women in this story disappear when the men do. That says something. Camille raising Dean's children alone in San Francisco. Working double shifts while Dean chases the horizon. She's the one who stays, who builds, who holds it together. The road only looks romantic from outside the kitchen window. Ed Dunkel abandoned his wife because Dean told him to. Just left her in a hotel room and drove away. Sal writes this down and notices how casually he accepted it at the time. How they all accepted it. The whole tribe touched by Dean was changed. Damaged and awakened in equal measure. Nobody came through his orbit unburned. But nobody came through untouched by light either. That's the paradox Sal is trying to write. Because the thing is, Dean woke people up. Before him, Sal was a man in a room. After him, Sal was a man who had seen America from a car going 90 and heard jazz musicians reach God and slept under Mexican stars. Dean Moriarty, destroyer and liberator. The man who broke every promise and kept the only one that mattered, which was to make life feel like it was actually happening. That's the paradox at the heart of everything. And here's the thing Sal can barely admit. He sees himself in Dean. His own selfishness when he left Terry. His own carelessness with the people who loved him. The road didn't make them different. It made them similar. The women in this story carried the weight the men refused to lift. Marilou Camille, Terry Ed's wife. Each one loved a man more in love with motion. Each one built something while the men burned it down. America itself is a character in this book, not a backdrop but a living, breathing presence. The land pulls Sal forward as much as Dean does. The vastness, the beauty, the loneliness built into every mile. Those highways connect everything. Denver to San Francisco to New Orleans to Mexico City. The roads are the country's nervous system, carrying people and goods and dreams and heartbreak coast to coast without stopping. Small town America. The places Sal and Dean drove through at 90 miles an hour without stopping. Each one a whole world they never entered. The gas stations and diners glimpsed and gone. The lives they never imagined. The jazz musicians understood something Dean spent his whole life chasing. How to be completely present in one moment. The difference was they built that presence through discipline. Dean tried to steal it through speed. Time and speed. Dean's real war is with time itself. If he moves fast enough, maybe time can't catch him. If he fills every second, maybe the seconds won't empty out. It never works, but he never stops trying. To stop moving is to face himself. That's Dean's secret terror. Pull over, turn off the engine, sit in silence, and what's left? A boy from Larimer Street whose father vanished into a bottle. That's what the road covers up. Sal can stop. That's the difference between them. Sal can sit at a desk, can return to his aunt, can hold still long enough for the words to come. The road feeds him but doesn't own him. Not anymore. The novel takes shape over months. Each chapter a road trip. Each road trip a lesson Sal didn't know he was learning. The typewriter consumes everything he brought back and turns it into something lasting. Writing is Sal's version of the road, his own journey forward. Each sentence a mile covered, each paragraph a town passed through. The typewriter carries him as surely as any Hudson ever did. Time passes in New York. The seasons cycle. Sal watches spring arrive from his window while typing about winter. He's living in two time periods at once, the now and the then, braided together by the book. Then Sal meets Laura. She's quiet and warm and doesn't need to be anywhere else. When she laughs, she means it. When she stays, she means that too. After the road, her stillness feels like arriving. A quieter life forms around Sal. Dinners cooked at home. Walks through the neighborhood. Sundays with the newspaper. The ordinary things he drove past at 90 miles an hour turn out to be the destination all along. And then, one more time, a knock at the door. Sal opens it and there stands Dean Moriarty. Thinner than ever, wilder than ever, more broken than ever. Grinning that same impossible grin. Dean is barely holding together. He's come from San Francisco where Camille threw him out again. He talks faster than ever but the words connect less. The engine is racing but the gears aren't catching. Dean talks all night. About jazz, about God, about the road, about his children. The words pour out like water from a cracked pipe. Beautiful and uncontainable and going nowhere. Sal listens and knows something has shifted permanently. Sal has tickets to a concert that evening. He and Laura are going with friends. Dean can't come. There's no room in the car. It's a small thing, but it contains everything. Sal is choosing a different life. The car drives away with Sal inside, heading to the concert. Through the rear window, Sal watches Dean standing on the New York sidewalk, coat too thin, getting smaller. The reversal is complete. Dean shrinks in the rear window until he's just a dot, then a memory, then a feeling in Sal's chest that will never fully go away. This is the image that haunts the entire book. A man alone on a cold sidewalk. Now Sal is the one leaving. After all those times watching Dean drive away from women, from friends, from consequences, Sal finally drives away from Dean. The student has learned the lesson the teacher couldn't teach himself. Dean walks away through cold New York streets. Hands in pockets, collar up, no car, no destination, no one waiting. Just a man in the winter and the long walk to nowhere he hasn't already been. This image, Dean walking alone through cold streets. If you remember one thing from On the Road, let it be this. Not the speed, not the jazz, not the freedom. The man alone afterward. That's the real story. What does Sal feel watching Dean disappear? Guilt, certainly. Relief, honestly. Sadness deeper than either. And love, the kind that survives everything. Even the realization that the person you love will never change. The friendship isn't over. It will never be over. But it's transformed into something that lives in memory, and on the page rather than on the highway. That might be its truest form, the story of it. Dean will keep moving. It's all he knows. Somewhere right now, he's hitching a ride or borrowing a car or walking along some American highway with his thumb out. The road is the only home he doesn't destroy. Sal will write the book. It's all he can do. Not to save Dean or explain Dean or forgive Dean, but to witness him. To say this man existed, and he burned, and I saw it, and here it is. The book's last lines carry a feeling that's hard to name. Sal thinks of Dean. He thinks of the evening star. He thinks of the vast American night stretching over everything. And he thinks, I still love this man. That final thought about Dean. What does it mean? It means love doesn't need the loved one to be good. It doesn't need them to stay. It doesn't even need them to be present. It just needs to be honest. The road goes on without them. Other cars, other dreamers. Other young men and women heading west with maps they'll never follow and plans that will dissolve on contact with the real. The story repeats. The story always repeats. America keeps moving west even though the West ran out a century ago. The old dream of open land became the dream of open road, became the dream of just going, anywhere, as long as you're going. Dean Moriarty is the purest expression of this. Sal's book is a monument to what was beautiful and what was broken. It doesn't separate the two because they can't be separated. The beauty was the brokenness. The brokenness was beautiful. That's the whole truth of it. The story of On the Road ends where it began, with longing, with a man thinking of a friend, thinking of the road, thinking of the vast American night. It ends not with an arrival, but with a feeling, and that's enough. Now that we've walked the whole road with Sal and Dean, let's step back for a while. There's a story behind the story that's almost as wild as the book itself. Let's go there gently. Before On the Road, American novels had a certain way of carrying themselves. Formal, structured, carefully punctuated. Kerouac looked at all that and decided to set it on fire. Politely, of course, but completely. The voice. That's what hit people first. Kerouac wrote like someone talking to you at 3 in the morning, breathless and honest. Jazz rhythms built into the sentences themselves. Prose that moved like music. Here's the famous story. April 1951. Kerouac fed a continuous roll of paper into his typewriter, brewed coffee, and wrote for 3 solid weeks. 120 feet of text, no chapters, no stopping. Spontaneous prose, he called it. First thought, best thought. Don't revise, don't second guess. Don't let the conscious mind edit what the unconscious is trying to say. Let the words come like jazz improvisation. Trust the flow. Jazz didn't just influence what Kerouac wrote about. It shaped how he wrote. The bebop musicians played long, winding improvisations that circled back on themselves. Kerouac's sentences do exactly the same thing. Read a Kerouac sentence out loud and you'll feel it. The run-on clauses are like miles of highway. The commas are rest stops you blow past. And the period, when it finally comes, feels like pulling into a driveway at dawn. If you ever get the chance to hear On the Road read aloud, take it. The book transforms. It was written for the voice, not the eye. The rhythm carries you the way the road carried Sal. You don't have to do anything but listen. Traditional novels of that era were built like architecture. Foundations, walls, roof, everything in its place. Kerouac's novel is built like a road. It goes where it goes, bends when it bends, and the scenery is the structure. The critics were not kind. When On the Road came out, plenty of important literary people dismissed it as self-indulgent rambling. One famous review called it typing rather than writing. That insult stuck for decades. The typing insult came from a rival writer, and it was clever and it was wrong. What it missed was that the seeming artlessness was itself an art, like a jazz solo that sounds effortless but requires years of practice. What the critics missed was the emotional truth. You can argue with the form, but you can't argue with what the book makes you feel. That raw, aching, exhilarating thing in your chest when Sal describes the road. That's not typing. Look at the structure more carefully and it reveals itself. 4 journeys, matching roughly to 4 seasons. Each trip builds on the last, each one stripping away more illusion. It's shapelier than it looks. Sal as narrator is unreliable in the best way. He romanticizes, he exaggerates, he paints everything in colors brighter than life. But he knows he's doing it. And that honesty about his own dishonesty is what makes the voice trustworthy. Dean is the muse. Without Dean, Sal has no book. The wild friend who handed him an entire continent of experience to write about. The question that hovers is whether Dean knows he's being used, and whether Sal knows he's using him. Who's the real hero? Sal narrates, but Dean acts. Dean lives the life that Sal turns into literature. Without Dean's wildness, no book. Without Sal's craft, no legacy. They needed each other like pen needs paper. The women in On the Road deserve more than Kerouac gave them. Marilou, Camille, Terry. They're vivid when they appear, but they appear and disappear at the men's convenience. The book knows this is a flaw. Maybe. Race is another complicated thread. Sal romanticizes black culture and Mexican culture with genuine admiration, but also with the blindness of a tourist. He loves what he sees without always understanding what he's seeing. Through Sal's eyes, Mexican and black cultures glow with an authenticity he feels his own white middle class world lacks. There's real perception in that feeling, but also real blindness. He romanticizes the suffering along with the beauty. What the book gets absolutely right is the longing. That universal ache for something more, something just beyond reach. Every person who's ever looked at a highway and felt a tug in their chest knows what Sal is talking about. What the book gets wrong, or at least doesn't fully reckon with, is the cost. The abandoned women, the neglected children, the lives treated as scenery for someone else's spiritual journey. Freedom isn't free. Someone always pays. Here's something beautiful about this book. Read it at 20 and you feel the freedom. Read it at 40 and you feel the wreckage. Both readings are completely real. The book contains them both at the same time. That's what separates a truly great book from a merely good one. It changes as you change. It says different things at different times in your life. On the Road is a completely different novel, depending on where you're standing when you read it. Young readers see Dean Moriarty and think, I want to be like that. Older readers see Dean Moriarty and think, I know someone like that, and I know how it ends. Both reactions honor the character. Both readings are valid because both are true. Dean is magnificent and destructive. The Road is liberating and costly. Kerouac's genius was holding both truths in one hand, without letting either cancel the other out. The prose style influenced everything that came after. Before Kerouac, American writing marched in straight lines. After him, it could wander, circle, sprint, and stumble. He gave permission for a new kind of voice, confessional mode. Before Kerouac, writers hid behind characters and plot. He wrote directly from his own experience, with barely a veil between himself and the page. That nakedness changed what was possible in prose. Music and writing merged in Kerouac's hands in a way nobody had managed before. He didn't write about jazz, he wrote jazz. The sentences swing. The paragraphs breathe. You can almost hear the rhythm section beneath the words. The scroll. 120 feet of continuous paper, taped together so Kerouac wouldn't have to stop to change sheets. It sounds like a stunt, but it was a philosophy. Remove the interruptions. Let the flow be unbroken. Why does the scroll matter? Because the form contains the philosophy. A road with no exits. A conversation with no pauses. A thought pursued to its end without the artificial break of changing the page. The medium is the message. Between writing the scroll in 1951 and publishing the novel in 1957, 6 years passed. 6 years of rejection letters and revisions, and Kerouac slowly going mad with frustration. The road to publication was its own grueling journey. Editors changed things. Names were altered to avoid lawsuits. Scenes were cut for length or content. The wild, raw scroll was tamed into something publishable. Whether that improved or diminished it depends on who you ask. The original scroll and the published novel are genuinely different books. The scroll is rawer, more explicit, more unguarded. The novel is tighter, more shaped, more careful. Readers debate which is the real on the road. When the scroll was finally published with real names in 2007, something shifted. Sal Paradise became Jack Kerouac. Dean Moriarty became Neil Cassidy. The fiction became fact, and the reading experience changed completely. How much of On the Road is true? Nearly all of it. The trips happened. The people were real. The conversations, the jazz nights, the abandonments. Kerouac witnessed more than he invented. He was a reporter of his own wild life. Nearly everything happened. The Mexico trip, the jazz nights, Marillo on the sidewalk, Dean at the door. Where Kerouac shaped reality was in the selection, the emphasis, the rhythm. He chose what to light and what to leave in shadow. The emotional truth is absolute. Even where facts bend, feelings don't. When Sal describes the longing, the ecstasy, the heartbreak, those are drawn from life without any distortion at all. The heart of the book is pure documentary. Kerouac's relationship to his own mythology became complicated quickly. He wrote the book about freedom, and then the book trapped him. Everyone wanted him to be Sal, to be Dean, to be the road itself. He was just a writer who wanted to be taken seriously. He wrote the book about freedom and then couldn't escape it. Every interview, every party, every encounter. People expected Jack Kerouac to be Dean Moriarty, but Jack was Sal. Quieter, watching, writing it all down from the edges. Let's talk about what the road means in America. It's not just asphalt. It's a national myth. The idea that freedom lives in movement, that somewhere out there the perfect place is waiting, that the horizon holds answers. Kerouac tapped into something ancient. Manifest destiny echoes in every mile Dean drives. That old American belief that the continent was there for the taking, that westward movement was righteous, that more land meant more freedom. The shadow of that idea is still on the road. But the frontier closed decades before Kerouac was born. The Pacific Ocean stopped the westward march. The continent was mapped, paved, settled. So the urge went inward and the road became the journey itself, not the destination. Cars replaced horses. Speed replaced open land. The covered wagon became the Cadillac, but the itch was the same. Dean Moriarty is just the latest version of an American character that's been on the move since the first ship landed. On the Road is the last great Western. No horses, no gunfights, but the same essential story. Men heading into unknown territory, testing themselves against vastness, leaving civilization for something wilder. Cowboys and Cadillacs. The war had just ended. Millions of young men came home from Europe and the Pacific to suburban houses and office jobs, and a prosperity that felt like a cage. They'd seen the world blow up. Normal felt impossible. That's why young men wanted to burn. Kerouac's famous phrase about the mad ones who burn like fabulous Roman candles. After the war, burning felt more honest than the quiet desperation of pretending everything was fine. The GI Bill sent a generation to college. They read Dostoevsky and Whitman and Rimbaud. They learned enough to know they were dissatisfied, but not enough to know what to do about it. Dean was the answer some of them found. That was the enemy the Beats identified even before they had a name. The gray flannel suit, the organization man, the quiet life of quiet desperation that Thoreau warned about a century earlier. The Beats wanted noise. Levittown versus Larimer Street, the brand new suburb where every house is identical versus the Skid Row where Dean's father slept in doorways. Two versions of America, both real, neither complete, on the road lives between them. Jazz as resistance. Black musicians creating an art form that couldn't be contained or predicted or controlled. The Beats heard in bebop a model for living. Improvise. Don't follow the score. Make it up as you go. But here's the complicated part. The Beats admired black culture from outside it. They borrowed the style without sharing the struggle. Kerouac loved jazz but didn't face what black musicians faced walking home after the gig. That gap matters. Dean Moriarty is the American it unleashed. Every impulse followed, every appetite fed, every rule broken with a grin. He's what happens when you remove the superego from the American dream. Exhilarating, terrifying, unsustainable. America both celebrated and feared Dean. Celebrated the freedom, the rebellion, the pure American energy. Feared the wreckage, the selfishness, the inability to build anything lasting. He's the mirror the country can't stop looking into. The book is mirror. That's its deepest function. When you read On the Road, you don't just see Sal and Dean. You see your own restlessness reflected back at you. Your own hunger for something you can't name. That's why it lasts. On the Road is America's unfinished self-portrait. A nation painting itself in motion, never sitting still long enough for the picture to dry. That's the genius of it. The portrait is the movement. The road is the canvas. And the canvas goes on forever. Now let's meet the man behind the book. Not Sal Paradise the character, but Jack Kerouac the writer. His story is just as wild, just as sad, and just as American as anything he put on the page. Lowell, Massachusetts. A mill town on the Merrimack River. French-Canadian families packed into triple-decker houses near the textile factories. This is where Jean-Louis Lebris de Kerouac was born in 1922, Jack to his friends. His real name tells you something important. Jean-Louis Lebris de Kerouac. French-Canadian, Catholic, working class. He grew up speaking Joel French at home before he spoke English. America was his second language in every sense. Young Jack was a football star. Fast, tough, smart enough for a scholarship to Columbia University in New York. Lowell's golden boy, heading to the big city. His parents couldn't have been prouder or more terrified. Before all of this, there was Gerard, Jack's older brother, who died of rheumatic fever when Jack was 4. Gerard was gentle, pious, almost saintly by family account. His death became the foundational grief of Kerouac's life. Gerard became a saint in Jack's mind, the perfect brother taken too soon. That loss gave Kerouac a spiritual hunger that never left him. He spent his life looking for transcendence, first in the road, then in jazz, finally in Buddhism. The search started at 4 years old. Columbia University in 1940. That's where everything begins. Not the football, which Jack quit after an argument with the coach, but the people. In the dorms and coffee shops of Morningside Heights, he met the future Beats. Allen Ginsberg, William Burroughs. The three of them found each other in wartime New York like magnets drawn together through the crowd, each one strange in a different way. Together they became a movement. Before the road, there was the sea. Jack joined the Merchant Marine and then briefly the Navy. He saw the Atlantic from a ship's deck and felt the first pull of something larger than Lowell. The world was out there, and it wanted to be seen. December 1946. A young man walks into Kerouac's New York apartment. His name is Neil Cassidy. He's 20 years old, fresh from Denver, with a criminal record and a smile that could open locked doors. Everything changes. The real Neil Cassidy was everything Dean Moriarty is and more. Faster, louder, more charming, more dangerous. He could talk for 12 hours straight without repeating himself. He could drive cross-country without sleeping. He was impossible and real. Neil's childhood was everything Dean's was and worse. Denver's Larimer Street. His father a genuine Skid Row drinker. Reform schools by age 10. Stealing cars by 14. He taught himself to read in jail libraries. The American bootstrap in its darkest version. The Cassidy-Kerouac dynamic was simple and complicated. Neil lived. Jack watched and wrote. Neil provided the raw material. Jack provided the art. Neither could have created on the road alone. They were complementary halves of one story. Neil wrote letters that were themselves works of wild, spontaneous art. Pages and pages of unbroken prose that poured from his pen like speech made visible. Kerouac read them, and thought this is how the novel should sound. Neil taught Jack to write like Neil talked. The real road trips, 1947, 48, 49, 50. 4 actual journeys that became the novel's 4 parts. New York to Denver to San Francisco to New Orleans to Mexico. Real miles, real dust, real jazz, real heartbreak. Real places, real people. Denver's Larimer Street is walkable. The San Francisco jazz clubs had names and addresses. Old Bull Lee was William Burroughs in his actual Louisiana house. The novel is a map with the names changed. April 1951. Kerouac sits down at his typewriter in a New York apartment, feeds in the scroll paper, and begins. 3 weeks of writing fueled by coffee and Benzedrine. The novel pours out like something that was always there, just waiting for the dam to break. The finished manuscript made the rounds. Publisher after publisher said no. Too raw, too formless, too explicit, too long, too short, too everything. For 6 years, the greatest road novel ever written sat in a drawer unwanted. 6 years. Imagine writing the book that changes American literature, and then waiting 6 years for anyone to publish it. Kerouac revised, despaired, revised again. He wrote other novels in the meantime. But this was the one. He knew it. Nobody else did yet. Finally, Viking Press says yes, 1957. The book will be published. Kerouac has waited half a decade. He's 35. The young man who wrote it on Benzedrine is already a different person. But the book is still alive. The New York Times review lands like a thunderbolt. A major critic calls it one of the most beautifully executed and important utterances of the generation. Overnight, Kerouac goes from unknown to famous. The road catches fire. Overnight fame. The word is accurate. Jack went to bed unknown and woke up as the voice of a generation he wasn't sure he wanted to speak for. Reporters called. TV shows invited him. Strangers recognized him on the street. Television. They put Kerouac on television, and he didn't know what to do with himself. Stiff, uncomfortable, drinking beforehand to calm his nerves. The man who wrote like jazz played like a funeral on camera. It was painful to watch. All Jack wanted was to be taken seriously as a writer. Instead, they made him a spokesman. The king of the beats, the papers called him. He wanted to talk about prose, and they wanted to talk about rebellion. The misunderstanding was permanent. The beat generation. Jack coined the term casually and then spent years trying to uncoin it. He meant beat, as in beaten down, as in weary, as in beatific. The media made it mean something else entirely. The label stuck like tar. Fame and alcohol. They arrived together and never separated. Jack had always drunk, but now he drank to cope. With the attention, the misunderstanding, the impossible expectation that he be Dean Moriarty 24 hours a day. The bottle became the break. The Dharma Bums, Big Sur, Desolation Angels, Visions of Cody. Novel after novel, each one trying to capture some piece of the enormous experience he'd lived. Some brilliant, some uneven, all honest. The work never stopped. Buddhism found Jack in the mid-50s. He read the Diamond Sutra and felt something crack open. For a while, Meditation and Eastern philosophy gave him what the road and the jazz couldn't. Peace. Or something close to it. Big Sur was the breakdown. 1960. Kerouac retreated to a cabin on the California coast and fell apart. The drinking, the fame, the loneliness. The unbearable weight of being Jack Kerouac finally cracked the foundation. He wrote about it with terrifying honesty. Through it all, there was his mother. Memory, he called her. She was his anchor, his provider, his constant. He kept coming back to her no matter how far he traveled. The road hero lived with his mom. That's not irony, that's truth. Living with memory. The great American road rebel, home by dinner. But there's no contradiction really. Sal always came home too. The difference between Kerouac and Cassidy was that Jack had a home to come home to. It might have been what saved his writing and doomed his myth. In his later years, Jack turned conservative. He supported the Vietnam War. He rejected the hippies who claimed him as their forefather. The rebel became something the rebels didn't recognize. People were shocked. They shouldn't have been. He was always more complicated than his legend. The counterculture claimed Kerouac, but he didn't claim them back. The hippies thought he was their grandfather. He thought they missed the point. He wasn't against America. He was heartbroken about it. Those are very different things. The drinking accelerated through the 60s. Public appearances became painful. Jack would show up to readings drunk, mumble through his material, stagger offstage. The man who made language dance could barely form sentences. Friends watched in helpless grief. February 1968. Neil Cassidy dies in Mexico. Beside railroad tracks near San Miguel de Allende. He'd been counting the ties between rails, walking, always walking. The real Dean Moriarty gone at 41. Neil died as he lived. On the road alone, burning out. Counting railroad ties in Mexico like a man counting the beats in a jazz solo. Never stopping. Never arriving, the pure motion consuming itself at last. Jack heard the news in Florida. Neil was dead. Dean Moriarty was dead. The man at the center of his greatest book gone. Jack had already lost him years before in a different way. But this was final. The road had one fewer traveler. Jack's final year. 1969. He's living in St. Petersburg, Florida, with his wife Stella and his mother Memra. The road hero ended up in a retirement town. He barely writes anymore. He mostly watches television and drinks. Stella Sampas, his last wife, a woman from Lowell from the old neighborhood. She took care of him and Memory both. Patient, steady. The kind of person who stays. The kind of person Dean Moriarty could never be and Jack Kerouac could never stop needing. October 21, 1969. Jack Kerouac dies in a St. Petersburg hospital. He's 47 years old. The man who wrote about living with such fierce joy died from the consequences of not being able to stop. Internal hemorrhaging caused by chronic alcoholism. That's the medical language. The poetic language is that the man who burned too bright burned out. The fire that fueled the art consumed the body that made the art. 47 is very young. There's a terrible irony. The man who wrote about living fast died from slowing down. Not a car crash, not a bar fight, not a blaze of glory. A recliner in Florida and a bottle that emptied before he did. The road doesn't kill you. Stopping does, if you never learned how. They buried him in Lowell. Full circle. The boy from the mill town went back to the mill town. Edson Catholic Cemetery. Near his brother Gerard. Near his father, back in the French-Canadian earth he came from. The gravestone, it reads, "Hey honored life. T. Jean, the little French-Canadian boy who became the voice of American restlessness, resting at last in the earth of Lowell, Massachusetts. Not on the road. Home, finally home." Allen Ginsberg wept openly at the funeral. The three who started it together were now two. The triangle that launched the Beats had lost its strongest literary side. Ginsberg would spend decades keeping Kerouac's flame alive. The surviving Beats carried on. Ginsberg became the most famous poet in America. Burroughs lived to be 83, still strange, still writing. But something essential was gone. the one who made it sound like music had fallen silent. After Jack died, unpublished works kept emerging from drawers and closets and memoirs' careful archives. Novel after novel, journal after journal. The dead writer kept publishing for decades, as if the typewriter couldn't stop even now. In 2001, the original scroll sold at auction for $2,430,000. 120 feet of paper. Typed in 3 weeks, rejected for 6 years. Now worth more than Jack earned in his entire life. His mother kept everything. Memory was the real archivist of the beats. She saved drafts, letters, notebooks, everything her T-Gene ever wrote. Without her, half of what we know about Kerouac would be lost. The anchor held the ship's records, from Lowell to legend. A French-Canadian boy from a mill town who became the voice of American restlessness, who wrote the road into literature, and then the road wrote him into history. Jean-Louis Lebris de Kerouac, Jack to his friends, T-Gene to his mother. So what did On the Road set in motion? Let's spend some time with that question. Because the ripples from this book are still moving outward, nearly 70 years later. Some of them might have reached you tonight. When the book came out in 1957, the effect was immediate and physical. Young people across America stood up from wherever they were sitting and started moving. The hitchhiking rate surged overnight. The book was a match and the country was dry tinder. People literally hit the road because of this book. Quit their jobs, left their apartments, stuck out their thumbs. Some found what Sal found. Some found what Dean found. Most found something in between, but they went. The book made them go. A teenager in Minnesota read On the Road and decided to leave home for New York. His name was Robert Zimmerman. He'd later call himself Bob Dylan. The book cracked open his idea of what was possible. The chain reaction from that alone changed the world. The 1960s counterculture grew directly from the soil the beats tilled. On the Road was the text, the First Testament. Everything that followed, the protests, the communes, the psychedelia, had this book in its DNA somewhere. Ken Kesey and the Merry Pranksters took the road trip concept and amplified it beyond anything Kerouac imagined. Their bus, named Further, was driven by none other than Neal Cassady himself, the real Dean Moriarty, still at the wheel, still going. Neal Cassady was the living bridge between the beats and the hippies. He drove Kerouac's car in the 40s and Kesey's bus in the 60s. One man connecting two revolutions, the road's most reliable courier, delivering rebellion across decades. Tom Wolfe wrote about the pranksters and Neal's driving and the whole psychedelic bus trip. The story Kerouac started, Wolfe continued. The road narrative passing from one writer to the next like a relay baton made of American asphalt. Hunter Thompson took Kerouac's method and turned the volume to 11. Gonzo journalism, he called it. First-person experiential, wild, unfiltered. The spontaneous prose of On the Road mutated into something louder, but recognizably descended from the same source. Road movies were born from this book. Two friends heading west, searching for America, finding themselves or losing themselves along the way. Every road film carries the ghost of Sal and Dean in the passenger seat. Every road trip movie owes something to this book. The buddy comedy Heading West, the existential journey through the American landscape, the search for meaning at 70 miles an hour. Kerouac invented the template, and the world has been remixing it ever since. Music heard the book's frequency immediately. Rock and roll was already happening, but On the Road gave it a philosophy. The idea that art should be spontaneous, raw, lived before it was performed. The beats and the rockers recognized each other across the room. Patti Smith read Kerouac as a teenager, and it rearranged her molecules. She carried On the Road like a talisman into New York's punk scene. The next generation of beat, influenced artists were women, and they brought something Kerouac couldn't, which was the view from the other side of the car window. The book went everywhere. Translated into dozens of languages, read on every continent. A Japanese teenager in Tokyo, a Brazilian student in Sao Paulo, a French traveler in Marseille. Each one hearing the road call in their own language, but feeling the same pull. Japanese readers especially connected. Something in that culture's own tension between tradition and restlessness resonated deeply with Kerouac's story. On the Road became a foundational text for Japanese youth culture in ways Kerouac never could have predicted. In the 21st century, the book is still assigned in classrooms and still debated in coffee shops, still picked up by 18-year-olds who feel that same itch Sal felt, still making people uncomfortable and alive at the same time. Modern criticism looks at On the Road with sharper eyes than 1957 did. Gender, race, privilege. These lenses reveal things the original readers didn't see or didn't want to see. The book isn't diminished by this scrutiny. It's complicated by it. That's growth. The critiques are valid. The women are marginal. The racial gaze is problematic. The recklessness is sometimes just selfishness dressed up as liberation. Saying these things doesn't destroy the book. It makes the conversation around it richer and more honest. What survives the criticism is the emotional honesty. Strip away the problematic elements, and what remains is a man trying to tell the truth about longing, friendship, and the impossible desire to feel completely alive. That core is bulletproof. Every generation rereads it differently. The 50s read freedom. The 60s read rebellion. The 70s read disillusion. The 21st century reads privilege and cost. Each reading is the right reading for its time. The book absorbs them all. On the Road is a Rorschach test. What you see in it reveals where you are. If you see adventure, you're hungry. If you see damage, you've been hurt. If you see both, you're probably reading it right. The book is a mirror as much as a map. Road trip culture today descends directly from Kerouac. Vanlife, digital nomads, the urge to document every mile on a screen. The technology changed, but the hunger is the same. Sal's thumb is now a GPS pin, but the direction is still west. Modern road trips are documented in real time. Every sunset photographed, every meal posted, every mile counted by satellite. Sal carried a notebook. The difference between recording for yourself and performing for an audience changes the journey itself. The loneliness is the same though. No amount of connectivity has fixed the fundamental H that Sal felt looking at a highway. You can be surrounded by followers and still feel the pull of somewhere else. That hasn't changed. That might never change. Friendship is the book's real subject, not the road itself. The road is just the place where friendship gets tested, revealed, broken, rebuilt. Sal and Dean's friendship is the engine. Everything else is scenery rushing past. Dean and Sal, one of literature's great friendships. Up there with Huck and Jim, Holmes and Watson. But darker, more complicated, more honest about the ways friends use each other, and forgive each other, and fail each other, and can't let go. Why do we love people who are bad for us? That's Dean's eternal question. Not the one he asks, but the one he embodies. Every reader who's ever loved a charming disaster recognizes Dean immediately. He's the friend you can't quit and can't save. The book's compassion is maybe its deepest gift. Kerouac judged no one. Not Dean for his recklessness, not Marilou for her wildness, not the jazz musicians for their excess, not even himself for his failures. He simply witnessed. That's harder than it sounds. That generosity of spirit. To look at a man who abandoned you sick in Mexico and still write about him with love. That's not weakness. That's a kind of artistic courage most writers never achieve. Kerouac forgave on the page what he couldn't forgive in life. Lowell, Massachusetts today. There's a commemorative park for Kerouac. Granite pillars with passages from his books. Visitors come from around the world to sit where T. Jean sat and feel the pull of the road, he described. People leave things at Kerouac's grave. Notes, poems, bus tickets, road maps, small bottles of wine. Pilgrims to a shrine they built themselves. The communion between a dead writer and living readers continuing in the quiet of a Lowell cemetery. The scroll tours museums now. Behind glass, climate-controlled, 120 feet of paper that changed American literature. People line up to see it like a religious relic. The spontaneous manuscript under museum lighting. Kerouac would have laughed and been secretly pleased. In high schools and colleges, On the Road is assigned and resisted and embraced and argued about. Teachers try to contain it in a syllabus. Students break it out of the classroom and into their lives. The book resists being tamed. Always has. What do students feel when they read it for the first time? Some feel the electricity immediately. That jolt of recognition, the book saying out loud what they've only felt in private. The restlessness validated. The hunger given a name. Others resist at first. The run on sentences annoy them. The male self-absorption irritates them. The romanticizing feels dated. Then something cracks. A sentence lands, a scene connects, and the resistance transforms into reluctant admiration. The book is patient. It can wait. The book's question, the one it asks every reader without ever saying it directly, what would you do if you weren't afraid? Where would you go? Who would you become? That question doesn't expire. It's alive right now, in this room, in this moment. Not everyone should answer like Dean. That's important. His answer was movement without responsibility, freedom without consequence. Most people need roots. But the question itself is worth asking. The asking alone can change you. The road is still there. Route 66, Interstate 80, Highway 101. The pavement Sal and Dean wore smooth with their tires. Trucks and families and dreamers still roll along it every day. The road doesn't remember. It doesn't need to. America still drives. Coast to coast, border to border. Still looking for something ahead, still glancing in the rearview mirror at what was left behind. The engine of the American dream runs on gasoline and yearning in equal parts. On the road endures because the looking never stops. We're still out here, all of us, searching for something just over the next hill. Kerouac named that feeling, and now it has a book to live in forever. Not a bad legacy for a boy from Lowell. We're coming to the end of our time together tonight. The road is winding down. The engine is idling. Let's take these last few miles slowly, you and me, and let the story settle into something quiet. Think about Sal's journey. Not the miles but the arc. From a man stuck in a room, to a man on fire, to a man who learned what the fire was for. He turned the burning into a book. The restlessness into a resting place for others. The road at night is different. Quieter, softer, less demanding. The headlights carve a smaller circle in the dark, and the world outside it disappears. There's just you and the sound and the gentle motion forward. Like this, right now. What stays with you from this story? Maybe just a feeling. The particular ache of wanting something you can't name. Or the warmth of a friend who knew you better than you knew yourself. Either one is enough to carry. The feeling of wind through an open car window. That rush of air and freedom that hits your face and makes you close your eyes for just a second. Sal knew that feeling. Dean lived for that feeling. Tonight, let it pass gently over you. The feeling of arriving somewhere you've never been. That first moment when the car stops and you step out and everything is new. The air smells different. The light falls differently. You're different just for standing in a different place. The feeling of a friend who understands without words. Sal and Dean had that. In the car, in the jazz club, on those late night porches. The conversation that happens beneath the conversation. The knowing look. The shared silence that says everything. Dean is somewhere out there still. Not the man who's been gone for a long time, but the archetype. The restless, grinning spirit that shows up at your door when you least expect it and says, "Come on, let's go." He's in every reckless invitation. Sal is somewhere too. In every person sitting at a desk, trying to turn what they've lived into something that lasts. The notebooks and the late nights and the effort to make the temporary permanent. That's Sal's legacy. The trying. The jazz is still playing in those old clubs. Not the same musicians, not the same songs, but the same reaching for something beyond the notes. That's what IT was. Not a moment but a practice. Not a destination but a direction. The music never stops. Denver still sits beneath the Rockies. San Francisco still wears its fog. Mexico still pulses with life Sal could barely comprehend. The places don't need the book to be beautiful. But the book helps us see them the way Sal did. Lit from inside. The highway at 3 in the morning. That particular loneliness that's also a particular peace. When you're the only car for miles and the stars are thick and the road is yours alone. Sal knew that hour. It's the quietest place in America. Maybe tonight you feel a little of that restlessness too. That pull towards something unnamed. That sense that there's a version of your life happening just over the next hill, if you could only get there fast enough. Or maybe tonight you're glad to be exactly where you are. In this bed, in this room, in this quiet. And that's perfectly fine too. Sal learned eventually that the best road is the one that brings you back to where you're loved. Both are fine. The restlessness and the contentment. Sal needed both to write the book. He needed the road and he needed the room. The going out and the coming home. One without the other is only half the story. The road will be there tomorrow if you want it. Route 66, Interstate 80, whatever highway is nearest your door. The asphalt doesn't go anywhere overnight. It waits. It's very patient. It's been waiting since before Sal was born. Tonight, though, this is enough. This quiet, this warmth. This voice in this story and the slow feeling of the day letting go. No more miles tonight. Just the gentle engine of sleep idling closer. Let the engine idle down. No more acceleration, no more passing, no more highway. Just the slow tick of metal cooling and the silence rushing in where the noise was. That particular peace after a long drive. We're here now. The stars over America tonight are the same ones Sal and Dean saw from the roof of a Denver house in 1947. The same ones shining over Lowell where Jack is buried. Stars don't keep time. They just keep shining. Breathe with the rhythm of the road winding down. In and out, like miles passing. Like telephone poles ticking past a window. Like the steady beat of tires on pavement getting slower, getting softer, getting quieter. Neon signs going dark one by one in small towns across the country. The diner closes, the gas station dims, the motel puts out its vacancy light. America tucking itself in for the night, town by town, light by light. Somewhere a jazz saxophone plays its last note of the night. The musician lowers the horn, wipes his brow, nods to the empty room. The music doesn't end. It just goes somewhere you can't hear it for a while. Somewhere a car pulls over and the driver rests. Turns off the engine, tilts back the seat, watches the stars through the windshield. No more driving tonight. The road will keep without him. It always does. The great American night settling in. Coast to coast, from the Atlantic to the Pacific. The darkness covering the highways, and the cities and the fields and the mountains. One enormous blanket of quiet drawn over 3,000 miles. You've been good company tonight. Thank you for that. For listening this far, for staying on this road with me. For letting Sal and Dean and Jack and Neil keep you company in the dark. That's all any story asks for. A listener. The road is life. Sal understood that by the end. Not the highway itself, but the willingness to move through the world with open eyes. Tonight, life is gentle. Tonight, the road is this bed and this quiet and the slow drift downward. The typewriter quiet now. The highway empty. The sky enormous and patient above it all. Everything that burned has become warmth. Everything that moved has found its stillness. The story is told. The night has it from here. Close your eyes if they're not closed already. Let the road dissolve into something softer. The asphalt becomes a path. The path becomes a feeling. The feeling becomes sleep. It's all the same journey, just different speeds. Let the last image be something simple. A road disappearing over a hill in the distance. Not toward anything, not away from anything. Just going, the way roads do, gently and forever, into whatever comes next. No destination, no deadline, no speedometer. Just the soft hum of distance and the easy feeling of having gone far enough. You've gone far enough tonight. The rest of the road will wait. It promises, it always waits. Dean would look at this moment and understand it perfectly. Not the driving part, but the resting part. Even he knew, somewhere deep down, that the best part of going is the stopping. He just couldn't do it. You can? So do it now. We'll be here next time with another story. Another book, another night. Another voice in the dark telling you something beautiful while you drift off. That's the promise. We keep it every week. The library doesn't close. Another book, another journey, another night together. There's no shortage of great stories. Each one a different road. Each one leading somewhere worth going. And each one ending here in this quiet, in this peace with you. For now, rest well. The road will wait. The jazz will play again. Dean will grin at someone's door. Sal will sit at his typewriter. And the story will be here whenever you want to hear it again. That's the beauty of books. They never leave. Good night from somewhere in America. From the road and the room and the jazz club and the porch. From Sal and Dean and Jack and Neil. And from me, sweet dreams traveler, the road goes on. But tonight you rest.